So the Assassin's Creed modern day story has been a core part of the franchise for years and years. From way back in 2007 with the release of the first game, the AC universe has expanded to much more than just a historical open world game. The modern day story has always added an extra story element to the games that worked as an explanation as to why the characters are exploring this unique historical environment and allows for more mythical elements such as the Isu. But with the ending of Assassin's Creed Valhalla alluding to where the future of the games are going, I thought now would be a great time to discuss just exactly what the perfect solution for the modern day would be. And lucky for you, so did NStav13 over on the AC Reddit. Now their idea and theory really falls in line with what I want for the franchise and allows elements cut from the original series to be implemented once again. Now a link to their socials will be in the description below, so go and check them out, and all rights to this theory go to them. They go on to say that years ago, Nolan North discussed one of the original ideas for Assassin's Creed 3, a modern day game where Desmond used the bleeding effect to see his ancestors without the animus and using the skills to stop the launch of the Eye and the end of the world. Despite the original ideas, this never came to fruition, leaving fans clamoring for a modern day setting. Many of other fans felt glad this never happened due to failing to uphold some of the core series principles. Now today we are suggesting a setting that is both historical and modern, something that would definitely satisfy both fans. Now Abstergo's Animus project, headed by a young Warren Vidic, began in the earnest in 1980, with Subject 1 being forced to relive the memories of Aveline de Grand Prix before complications from the bleeding effect killed him in 1981. Warren Vidic volunteered himself as Subject 2 in 1981, while Abstergo searched for another candidate. An unknown subject was experimented on before Subject 4, Daniel Cross, was delivered to Vidic in 1983. I think this would be a great time for an AC game. Now imagine, if you will, 1980s Hong Kong. Business is booming, leading to the city of Hong Kong growing richer, while Kowloon and other cities quickly become overshadowed and filled with high-rises and warehouses. Most revolutionaries attempt to subvert the region silently from the shadows, while a growing movement of unrest against British and Chinese rule surges. Inconsistency from both governments has allowed dozens of triads to have turf wars as British authorities try to crack down on the crime. They lack any real agency in the Kowloon walled city, a 2 square hectare area in northern Kowloon of 350 buildings built on top of each other 14 stories high, free from the rule of the Chinese or British. This city of darkness was a labyrinthian tangle of metal and concrete, dripping water and pipes. While most people see the squalid conditions and cringe, the children who lived there played normally and went to school carrying umbrellas, careful to avoid the gang wars within. This city alone at a 1-to-1 scale would be a surreal and fascinating setting for an AC game, a city whose infamy has gone on to inspire forms of fiction including cyberpunk. I would love this by itself, but would go beyond that and recommend the entirety of the Hong Kong territory. The territory contained nearly 30 cities and smaller towns, including the city of Hong Kong, Kowloon, Aberdeen, Shuwan, Kalken, Shao, and Tau Po Newtown. Streets were bustling with cars, and hanging low were street signs and wires connecting skyscrapers and apartment buildings, making for perfect parkour routes through the metal overhangs and balconies. It may be wise for the player to retain a rope launcher a la Syndicate, though parkour wouldn't necessitate it. The dense urban sprawl of 1980s Hong Kong is matched by the rugged beauty of the mountains, shrines, and beaches that cover the other 50% of the area. Hong Kong itself is 427 square miles, about 10 times that of Paris and 5 times bigger than the map of Odyssey, so while creating a 1-to-1 recreation, that may be out of the picture for now, and a scale such as 1-to-3 may be possible, allowing for the grime and glamour to truly shine. I'd imagine the main character could drive, though maybe a personal motorcycle may be better for the character, allowing for a sleek badass persona as they meet the assassins or deal with the triads. Gun control was tough, and while there were a few notable exceptions like Yip Kao Foon's gang that used AK-47s to rob stores, most triads resorted to knives and the occasional handgun, allowing for combat to remain relatively unaffected and not turn into a third-person shooter. Syndicate shied away from using the real gangs of Victorian London to avoid lawsuits, and as a result, triads like the Sun Yon and 14K likely would not play a prominent role. Considering there were dozens of triads in the 80s and still 50 active triads today with only 14 routine being tracked by police, it wouldn't be possible for the assassins and Templars to head triads or have alliances and rivalries that can be implied without actually being named. Even then, they can still play on real events, such as the former officer Anthony Chung turning on the Sun Yeong. Perhaps he was a Templar mole, or the Templars were threatening him and his family. Now, there would undoubtedly be comparisons to GTA, Sleeping Dogs, Cyberpunk, and a handful of other games, but that's okay. This setting allows for a really unique take on the Assassin's Creed story. Perhaps in 1982, the main character is kidnapped by Abstergo and forced into an animus in Hong Kong, reliving part of the life of a famous assassin like Wei Yu. From there, the player uses the bleeding effect to break out and maybe joins the triads for money before getting recruited by assassins, with the dense jungle of the walled city acting as a base against the corporate elite Templars in the middle of Hong Kong. From there, the player can choose to invest in new skills and perks by re-entering the animus and learning from the bleeding effect. A system like this could allow the animus to take on more of a role in the story, not just as a device for showing a story with parallels for the character in the 1980s. It seems likely that the Chinese government would be controlled by the Templars, as they expelled 300,000 triad members to Hong Kong in the 50s, perhaps the purging of the Chinese Brotherhood. That doesn't mean that the assassins would necessarily be against communism, or the British government would be pro-assassin either, as assassins historically in law were both in favour of and persecuted by communists and the British Crown. It does seem unlikely that Ubisoft would potentially offend China by calling them Templars though. In 1982, Margaret Thatcher also visited Hong Kong before signing a deal in Beijing in 1984, formally handing over the territory to China after 1997. There's a lot that can be done between the clash of cultures between the communists and staunch capitalists of 1980s Hong Kong, while combining the terror of the triads and the 20th century assassins fighting against Templars' growing hegemony, and it seems to me that 1980s Hong Kong would be an ideal setting to tell a realistic cyberpunk-esque story that neatly fits in the AC universe and satisfies the itch for a modern AC. Perhaps it can take a bit of a Rogue One approach, where the character steals data from Abstergo to aid the assassins in building their first animus, possibly aiding a young William Miles who stole the first blueprints for the assassins in 1977, and Warren Vidic possibly even facing off, creating even more tension from William's capture in AC3. This time before the safety precautions and guards against the bleeding effect within the Animus project seems rife with potential and something they want to be explored. Wow, that was a huge story. Now, here's what I'm going to say. This would work perfectly as the modern day story for the Assassin's Creed franchise, okay? This could really link everything together and make a more combined story for the franchise. Do I want there to be just a singular solid modern day story? Yes. But do I want the entirety of Assassin's Creed to be expelled into this storyline where we have cars, motorbikes, guns, and all this stuff? No. But this could work as the separate modern day story. Maybe once Basim's story is done in Valhalla, after the next games, we can have this modern day story take place and we can finally play as William Miles in the modern day story. I really do like the idea of how we could aid William Miles in actually getting the first blueprints for the assassins for the Animus. That could really link everything together, and as they state in their text, really adds some tension between the Templar and assassin storyline in the modern day. Now guys and girls, in the comment section down below, I want you to let me know whether or not you would like a singular story of Assassin's Creed set in the modern era, or do you want it to stay confined to an historical setting but based within modern day elements? Or do you not want the modern day at all? Something obviously I don't agree with, but I want you guys to let me know in the comment section down below. Now guys and girls, if you have enjoyed this video, then click the like button down below, and of course remember to subscribe for some more awesome Assassin's Creed content. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video.